We can try this, forming a lotus bud with our two hands. And then giving the lotus bud to one another with all of our hearts. We don't stop very often, do we? So this is how it happened. Our family was destroyed by the murders of my sister-in-law and my two nephews. I don't have enough time to tell you about them, about Connie and the boys, but they were very active in their local church. They were beautiful people. She had such a lovely smile. She was very small in stature, and her smile was just, she beamed always. She had lost her husband to cancer very young, 3 years prior to the murders. So here in this beautiful place, I know I'm speaking to people of faith. Faith, as I see it in Zen, is rooted in experience. And that experience for me was obscene, painful, heart-shattering. How could I have known at that time that this incident, this event, would be a call to love? Our murders were the first case involving DNA in that jurisdiction in Pennsylvania, so the district attorney was eager. The crime happened in Pennsylvania, but in my book I have changed the names, all of the names, and I have changed the names of the locations as well. And that is to protect my family from any further publicity. It was just so traumatic for them. Photographers hiding behind trees at the funeral. So the crime was front page, top of the evening news. And the DA wanted 19-year-old Charles Grand convicted, and so did the public. In fact, they almost lynched him when he was brought back up from Florida. My family, too, wanted him to suffer. We wanted Charles to be forced to think long and hard every day of his life about what he had done. After stopping the trial on the third day by confessing to the crime, Charles received 3 consecutive life sentences without parole. There was no motive. He was not drinking or drugging when he committed the crimes. Everyone had questions. I paraphrase in my book an article that appeared in a major urban daily newspaper about the sentencing, and I'm going to read a portion of those paraphrases. The headline is "Man Spared by Judge for 3 Hideous Killings." And then there's the story of the murders. And then, clearly baffled, the judge wanted the missing piece. What in the world motivated this bright and soft-spoken young man from a decent home in the suburbs to carry out such a heinous act? What was the missing piece not uncovered in 3 days of testifying witnesses and psychiatric examinations by all officers of the law, by all legal and medical professionals? This is almost like something out of The Lord of the Flies or A Clockwork Orange, said the judge. The judge addressed Grand. I have no doubt that something is going on in there. This doesn't just happen. We can go to the moon, we can circle Mars, but we don't know what goes on in someone's mind, someone who would commit crimes such as these. The boy refused to talk. His sentence came down only 1 day after the lineup of witnesses for the defense describing Grand's swift downward spiral from a bright, diligent, enterprising student in the top 2% of his high school graduating class to cold-blooded murderer who walked out of school for good only 3 weeks before his slated graduation. His inconsolable mother, Trina Grand, tearfully described Charles as a smart, bright little boy who took science fair honors, chatted easily with grown-ups, worshipped his dad, and would sooner break an arm than miss a day of school. My 2 nephews were also smart, bright little boys, talented. And the 3 of them would work on a car that the boy's father left. He spent a lot of time at their house after school. Half a year before the crime, he stopped cutting his hair, I'm still excerpting the article here, and shaving, quit his college scouting, and took up with a different group of people. His mother said he began hating his family, hating the house, hating everything in it. What happened? I don't know, she said. Psychiatrist Raymond Smith used the metaphor of an onion to explain Grand's feelings, which he said are hidden under so many skins of protection that they are impossible to divine. While watching the slasher movie, Friday the 13th, Charles was reported to have remarked about the killer in the film, "He's almost as crazy as I am." Judge Garth urged the psychiatrist for more, but the doctor admitted he honestly did not know what caused Grand's illness or what or who led him to murder. That's the end of that excerpt. Our family was satisfied with the verdict. We did not want Charles to die. What was not brought out at the trial was the fact that Charles was on a crime spree before he committed the murders. First, he stole his father's guns and car. His father moved immediately to have Charles arrested, and it was while he was out on bail that he broke his parole, drove to Florida with his 15-year-old girlfriend, Leanne, and drove back up to Pennsylvania, committed the killings. With the murder weapons in the back seat, he drove back down to Florida and told Leanne every detail of what he had done. He said the killings were planned as a rehearsal for the killings of his own family. They would be next, he told her. She went straight to the police, and that was how he was arrested. For 20 years, I've searched for an answer to this crime. I interviewed the district attorney. I talked with the boy's mother. I worked with men in prison. I read books about lost boys. I corresponded with men who have committed crimes with malice aforethought. One of their letters, which is an apology by a sex offender to his victim, appears in the book with his permission. One thing I do know, and I thought in that letter I included because I thought it was a way of getting into the psyche of the murderer, of Charles. I have to be careful about saying the murderer, the killer, all the time because that's a label. One thing I do know, and the Buddha said it, hatred begets hatred. It is easy to see that the commission of such acts is possible only in a family of violence, only in a culture of violence that feeds on violence. The slasher films and television shows Charles watched are available to everyone. Is it true, I want to know, that youngsters who attempt murder or suicide are trying to deal in a twisted way with the loss of those whom they thought were supposed to care for them but did not? Charles was indeed a latchkey kid. Connie often cared for him after school in lieu of his own mother. And when he dropped out of school, she worried about him. And what did Charles' father need with an arsenal in his house? That's my question. Distraught, I took refuge in Zen. The Quakers led me to a Zen teacher, and it was with her that I got the first relief from my grief and confusion, and it was by doing what we just did together, by stopping and breathing, calming my breath. I had long tried to meditate, but when I found a teacher 6 months after the murders, everything changed. The fruits of the practice came slowly, stilling my body-mind. Day after day, I inched toward the faith which led to forgiveness. So now I have 2 prison chapters that are short to read to you, and in between those, the episode, I could call it, of my forgiving Charles. Daniel Berrigan says one should enter the prison as a bridegroom enters his bridal chamber. My first visit to County Town Prison was nothing like that. County Town is infused with the odors of fear, sweat, dread, stale cigarette smoke, impassive faces of the guards, no eye contact, no expression in the voices, not a welcoming smile, no windows, the emptying of pockets, the metal detectors, slamming metal doors, the tension of waiting before 4 successive, massive doors unlocked by machine and shut like gunshots, like guillotines. Prison doors do not close mindfully. No slam, no lock. Lock clicks into place. Slam says this is final. Slam is part of the punishment. Perhaps I had unfinished business inside prison walls, and that is why I felt the clear call to go to County Town, a medium security men's prison. I went to visit the husband of a Quaker friend who was convicted of a far lesser and nonviolent crime, growing marijuana in his attic and selling it to keep his kids in private Quaker schools.